This week's Torah portion is called Pinchas, who happened to be the grandchild of Aaron the high priest. He's also the hero of last week and this week because he rescued the Jewish people from a terrible, continuous plague. And even though it took the lives of 24,000 people, he was able to halt it at least there. You see, the Jews had succumbed to the temptation of the Midianite women, who enticed them to have relationships with them and to bow to their own personal idols. Because much of the tribe of Simon, were the culprits and were being judged and killed, the head of that tribe by the name of Zimri decided to do something that was drastic. And he took a Midianite princess, brought her to Moses, and said, "Excuse me, am I allowed to be with this non-Jewish woman or not?" And his intention was that Moses himself was married to a Midianite woman. Yes, albeit that she had converted, but nonetheless, he was still posing to him a question, putting him on the spot. And he went back to his tent with this Midianite woman and cohabited with her. At that moment, Pinchas remembered a law that sometimes you cannot wait for the courts to provide judgment to people because there is no time. The very fabric and fiber of the society is breaking down. So he runs into the tribal area of Shimon, makes his way into the tent of Zimri. And while Zimri is with this Midianite woman, he impales both of them, kills them, and brings a stop to the plague, making the Jewish people realize what a terrible mistake they are engaging in. Now, the question from this whole Torah portion is that Pinchas was known as a zealot. He took the law into his own hands. And many people questioned him afterwards. You think he really had noble intentions? Maybe he was acting out of anger. Maybe that's his natural temperament. And the Torah testifies that God comes to his aid and says, "Pinchas, no, I'm making with you the covenant of peace. I know that whatever you did, even though it was an act of murder, even though it was a violent act, I can testify to the rest of the nation that you acted noble and you did it for the sake of the Jewish people. And that it wasn't an easy thing for you. In fact, it was a difficult one, even one that you thought you may not come out alive. But you knew it was the right thing at the right moment." I think the Jewish people, in some way, find themselves in a very precarious situation. We are surrounded by enemies that really, truly are enemies of the people of the world that share our values. And yet somehow we have become the watchdog of the world, taking on terrorists and murderers that are being backed by the strongest nation that supports terror. And yet, not only are we doing it alone, but they are questioning our motives. They are questioning whether we're doing the right thing, when probably deep down they know that somebody has to do it. And from Pinchas we learn that just because there are terrible things that come to fruition because of your actions, doesn't necessarily mean they're wrong. And there are horrible scenes that are being seen by the entire world. But that's true when you're at war. And as such, I think that we as Jews, for the most part, we are answerable to ourselves. And we believe and we know that ultimately, that we, while behaving or using the tools of other nations, swords and guns and planes and bombs, we are truly the descendants of Aaron. We are acting out of peace and out of love. And how do we know that? Because we are endangering our soldiers, so that we should do the particular action in a way that's far safer for us, but hopefully will minimize casualties. Why this world doesn't see it? Well, even Pinchas, after the act, the plague had stopped because of him, was being questioned by the nation whether he truly is just a violent guy, or did he really do it because he felt there was no one else and it was the proper thing to do. And Israel should just stick to it, knowing that ultimately we are a nation of peace. And when you're a nation of peace, just because you act violently doesn't mean that you're no longer loving. It just means that you're doing what you have to do. Have a great Shabbos.